This is The Strange Recital, a podcast about fiction which questions the nature of reality.
A mutilated beggar appeared at my taxi window. He seemed no more than a teenager, but it was hard to see past the heavy scarring on his face. Half his lower jaw was missing, teeth exposed. Both arms ended like sausages just below the elbows. A small wooden box hung on a string around his neck. With his stumps he thumped the glass, again and again. His voice was slurred but youthful and polite. "Excuse me, sir, I am crippled. Please help." I saw his tongue working in his ruined mouth. "Rupee? Dollah?" "Pay no attention," said my driver, Ramesh, in his thick Marathi accent. I turned my eyes forward, the traffic picked up, and we left the beggar behind. As far as I knew, we were heading south along the western edge of the island that is the city of Mumbai. This was late November, but the heat was like a huge sweaty hand pressing down. Buildings, vehicles, people, noise, even the air gave a sensation of density, the definition of congested. Soon we reached a highway that curved along the sea, and a weight inside me lifted. A horizon, blue meeting blue, and light, big, wide, the tinge of lazy that says late afternoon, something I could recognize, even if barely, the tiniest bit like the open sky of southern Alberta, back home. We were on our way from the Kohinoor Continental, my hotel near the airport, to the Colaba district, the peninsula at the southern tip of Mumbai. Colaba was recommended as a place for good food, entertainment, the arts, a Westerner-friendly attitude. I had a mission to fulfill, but that didn't start until tomorrow. For one evening, I could relax. I'd been working for a software company in Toronto for 5 years since college, my clean-cut, good Mormon boy persona perfectly suited to climb the corporate ladder. But my girlfriend had just dumped me for being that very person, boring. I wasn't feeling wonderful. So when my boss got sick and his boss offered me this trip to India to negotiate code outsourcing, I was happy to go. Colaba was bustling, of course. We crawled along the crowded streets past the National Art Gallery, a roundabout with a fountain, a historical museum, as Ramesh put it, a cineplex showing Fahrenheit 9/11, Around the World in 80 Days, and Basic Instinct, a McDonald's, and various banks, cafes, stores, offices, who knows what else. I had a map and intended to walk, so I said goodbye to Ramesh at the gateway of India and was immediately accosted by an old man in a saffron robe who insisted with hand signs and rapid gibberish that I receive a thread around my wrist and a dab of red paint on my forehead, for which he earned 10 rupees. I gave another 10 for the silence of her supplication to a teenage girl carrying a baby. After that, I shook my head no to every request, like waving a hand in a swarm of gnats. The arch and the plaza were impressive, as was the Taj Mahal across the street, not the famous ancient monument to love hundreds of miles to the northeast in Agra, but its namesake, a huge Edwardian-era luxury hotel. Today was November 26, 2004. In 2008, on this very day, this building would be bombed by Pakistani terrorists in a citywide attack planned in part by an American spy who played both sides. I walked through the crowded blocks around the Taj Mahal. Windows displayed Louis Vuitton handbags and dirty-faced children begged for food. The sun set and the western sky glowed turquoise as I found myself at Leopold Café, a well-known hangout for expats, tourists, and the locals who like them. I decided to have dinner. The big dining room was crowded and noisy, but a little cooler, and I was able to get a small table alone. I ordered a bottle of water and a plate of tandoori chicken that arrived quickly with a side of fresh greens, some of them unidentifiable. Of course, I didn't know that 4 years later, 10 people would be murdered and many more injured in this very room. As I ate, I glanced around at the faces. I could easily have been in a Toronto cafe, but something was a little off, an element of surrealism under it all. I was on the other side of the planet after all. Shouldn't everything be backward? I remembered a few hours earlier in my hotel lobby, as I was checking in, and again later when I was arranging the car service, a middle-aged Indian man sat at a boat-like organ made of black wood, serenading the guests. He played Danny Boy with a machine-made maraca beat. Then it was the Godfather theme, with a waltz rhythm and an organ trill in every pause. A kind of a hush had funky bass and hi-hat with fancy vamping and ooh-la-la keywork. Then it was a melodramatic Sunny. A Western hit parade gone loony. Dressed-up people streamed by me, saris of every color. Then I saw the sign. In the Emerald Room, Hanish weds Elvina tonight. Dinner tasted good. Afterward, I stood on the sidewalk outside Leopold's and just stared at the busy scene, the noise and congestion, electric-lit civilization shredding the darkness under a silent night sky. The heat had faded a bit since sunset, but I didn't dare take a deep breath because the air was polluted. I had begun to feel strangely sluggish, as if my muscles just didn't want to move. Jet lag, I thought. And why was I so thirsty? As people and traffic streamed past, my attention was drawn to the brick wall of the building I found myself leaning against. A lovely, delicate fern had emerged from the mortar and was waving gently in the air. I hadn't seen it there before. I doubt if the proprietors want weeds growing out of their wall, I said to myself, and I reached to pull it out. It must have been of such fine structure that I wasn't seeing it properly, as it completely escaped my grasp. I tried again and again, but I couldn't grab the fern. It didn't move, yet it eluded me every time. I was angry. "Damn it! Go to hell then!" I yelled at the wall. Then I turned and walked away up the sidewalk. Passers-by looked straight ahead, but occasionally one would glance at me, or rather, the face, already so foreign, would continue looking tranquilly forward, while at the same time it would do something no face had ever done before. A copy of itself, a second face, would twist to stare at me, directly at me alone. Every stare was full of disdain, even disgust. A lip would curl, a nose wrinkle. Eyes were wide or squinting, seeing something ugly. Was I so obvious an outsider? Did I have no right to be here? I could only turn my eyes down to the ground and keep walking. From every crack in the sidewalk, a lace-like fern was growing. My tongue was a thick cotton ball. My legs were tree trunks, the effort to move them becoming just too much. I could walk no more. I sat on a low wall near the sidewalk. Everything seemed thick and heavy. I sat there like a part of the wall, a stone. People strolled past. Cars honked, all perceived dimly through thick, smoky glass. After a time I can't define, both forever and a moment, I became aware of something on the sidewalk. Down there among the wispy weeds was a $1 bill. A faraway voice said, "Dollah?" With slow movements, like pushing through thick mud, I got down on my hands and knees to pick up the $1. I reached, grasped, but no, it wasn't in my hand. I tried again, and missed, and again. What was wrong with my eyes, or my hands? I could see the bill clearly, but my fingers could not find it. Feet passed. I heard whispers, hisses of scorn. I raised my head enough to see faces turned and fingers pointed. Suddenly I was full of shame, me on the ground, grasping for $1. I tried to stand up, but my muscles refused to obey, refused with pain. I was paralyzed, stuck in concrete. This was more than I could take. "Help!" I yelled, but it came out as a hoarse croak, surely too quiet to be heard. Help! Help! I was struggling with all my strength, but I could not move my body nor raise my voice. Please! Tears stung my eyes. Please! I don't know how long I writhed on the ground in pain. I only remember a kind face. A sadhu without the gauntness, a man in shirt and pants of loose linen, with a long graying beard and hair piled up in a topknot, with a gentle smile and cheerful eyes. It seems he helped me up and into the back seat of a car. For hours and hours, through the night, I rode in that capsule of calm and kindness, but time was swallowed by psychosis. On the back surface of the seat in front of me, tiny people in peppermint-striped uniforms climbed up and down ladders. They seemed to be painting a house or washing windows. A guy from work, whom I barely knew, crouched like a small child on the floor of the car, making jokes that I laughed at loudly but could never remember. A branch of a peach tree hung down from the ceiling, and I attempted to pick the rosy peaches, but grew frustrated when they slipped through my grasp. The bearded stranger beside me smiled even as I told him long stories about people I had known in high school, the football star, the prom queen, told him as if he knew them by name. He gave me water from a bottle to ease my cotton mouth, and I was grateful. Later, when I got out to pee by the side of the road, my father, the Mormon bishop, was standing beside me. We had never pissed together side by side. I liked it. Back in the car, I insisted on seeing myself in the rearview mirror. I wondered if I looked different since my mind had changed. The driver, a young brown-skinned man, twisted the mirror for me to look, and the only part of the face that made any impression on me was the eyes. They had no irises. The pupils were so enlarged the eyes looked like black holes. I learned later that I spoke to the image as if to another person. Man, you look bad. Get it together. As the sky grew pink on our left and the sun began to rise, I saw palm trees and empty fields on both sides of the road. Occasional low structures, no city buildings. I was beginning to feel normal again, and I attempted a friendly conversation with my companion. Look at those monkeys with little hats and vests jumping around under the trees, I said. His face looked tired, but he gave me a kind smile and a shake of the head. There are no monkeys there, he said. Oh. I returned to gazing out the window, and after a time I said, Look at those monkeys with little hats and vests jumping around under the trees. Again he replied, There are no monkeys there. And immediately, with a rush of embarrassment, I remembered. We had already been through this. I'm sorry, I said. I just said that, didn't I? If you remember it, I think you're on the way to recovery, he said. That's when I realized he was speaking perfect North American English. What happened to me? I think you've just been through an experience with datura. I take it you didn't ingest the stuff intentionally. Definitely not. What is datura? It's a hallucinogenic plant, a flower that grows just about anywhere. Big white blossom, sometimes called moonflower. I've heard about this, a new type of anti-American or anti-European activism. Feed the white oppressor a taste of nature's magic, make him go crazy, something like that. Wow, I couldn't quite take it all in. I think I slipped back into a trance for a while, staring out the window at the passing landscape, a tropical paradise. When I looked again, he was asleep. Suddenly I realized I was exhausted. I closed my eyes and lost consciousness. In my dreams, this insanity never happened. I dreamed a whole life, from country child to city adult. I flew to Mumbai, gave 50 rupees to the beggar at my car window, had a successful meeting, flew back to Toronto. My girlfriend decided she still loved me. We married and bought a nice house in the suburbs. I got a promotion at work, then another one. She had a successful real estate career. We had 2 daughters who soon went to school, and before long, with both drama and comedy, were beautifully grown up, dating, in college, then having children of their own, children who bounced on my knee, and before I knew it, became adults. Every moment of all the years was fully real in all its dimensions, internal and external. And then I was an old man, sitting in a recliner in my living room, wondering how it had all happened so fast. So fast I couldn't grasp it. I could never really catch hold. My life slipped past. It just slipped past like a dream, like the dream it actually was. When I awoke, I was on a narrow bed in a tiny drab room. Sunshine through a window cast palm frond shadows onto the stucco wall. I looked at my watch, but it was a total blur. My eyes refused to focus. I stood up and was immediately dizzy. I stumbled to the door, through a small, cluttered kitchen, and outside, squinting in the dazzling sunlight. There, in a low chair on the sandy ground, was my benefactor, shirtless, his paunch tanned by the sun, relaxing with a glass of something brown and creamy. His dreadlocks were unraveled and would have dragged the ground had they not been looped over the back of the chair. "I'm blind," I said. "Don't worry, it'll wear off by this afternoon." He smiled up at me. "Welcome back to the real world." "What time is it? I'm supposed to be at a meeting." "It's around 11 or so. I don't think you'll make that meeting." "Where the hell are we?" "Have some iced coffee and relax. In a bit, we'll go down to the beach." I sat heavily in a chair near his and put my head in my hands. "Oh man, this is bad." "It might be the best thing that ever happened to you. You can't know just yet, can you?" "Really, where are we? And who are you?" "You can call me Shiv. And we're at my home in Anjuna, in the beautiful province of Goa, in the Republic of India." "Do you know what happened to my cell phone? I've got to make some calls. Is there a landline here? I'm expected to be—" "Too late. I never saw your phone. It's gone. Embrace the change, my friend. Breathe." I obeyed. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. His feet were bare on the ground. I peeled off my penny loafers and socks and curled my toes in the sand. Then I leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes, and let the sun bathe my face. I imagined its rays were healing my sight. "What should I call you?" he asked. "Bradley Reed." It sounded flat and strange to my ears. "BR will do." We sat in silence. With eyes still closed, I said, "So you're American?" "New York boy gone wild," he chuckled. "My destiny brought me here, of all places." As I leaned back and breathed and let the sun make brilliant red mandalas on the inside of my eyelids, a seed of possibility was planted. It felt so good to relax. A little later, I traded my blue Oxford long-sleeve button-down for one of Shiv's T-shirts. The day was hot. I wasn't yet ready to cut off my khaki slacks, but that day would come before long. We walked a mile or so to South Anjuna Beach and had breakfast at Curly's Beach Shack. Tables crowded under a thatched roof, open to the small beach and the vast, brilliant horizon. Waves rolled in with unceasing, hypnotic rhythm. A few girls in bikinis sunbathed on lounges. People seemed to just be waking up, but they all wore friendly smiles. The vibe was sleepy and laid back, bathed in the warmth of the sun, cooled by the fresh ocean breeze. I wasn't very hungry, but I munched on some shrimp and fries as we sat side by side, silent, staring at the sea. This was all so new to me. What would happen next? I can't say exactly what was the turning point. Maybe it was the delicious, perfect emptiness of this day, or maybe it was the night. After Shiv and I napped during the afternoon, we came back to the beach as the sun was setting. Now it was something entirely different. A bonfire blazed on the sand. Under Curly's roof, neon colors and psychedelic patterns pulsed with the constant driving throb of rave music, and a crowd of people danced like one organism with 1,000 arms and legs. Again and again, sweet and pungent herb smoke wafted past my nostrils. Tan skin and long hair and crazy-hued, scanty clothing mixed and swirled like a paint palette in perpetual motion. For a long time, I just watched. Then I joined in. Did I know then that I would never return to my former life? I can't say. As the days went by, then the weeks, I met Shiv's friends, people who welcomed me without question, people from a dozen countries, learning to speak each other's languages. We cooked healthy food together and jammed around a fire on the beach. I learned to drum. My hair grew long, my skin brown, my feet tough. I discovered how it felt to, as someone said, fog the mind, stir the soul. And with the help of chemistry and plants, teacher plants, but not datura, never again datura, to go beyond the fog to clarity, to sparkling visions of other possibilities, the universe without end. I fell in love. I am no longer that conservative Canadian boy. Every cell in my body has been replaced, and I am grateful. I tell Shiv frequently how much I appreciate his kindness, his willingness to pick up a madman off a Mumbai street and treat him like a brother. And the years have been good to me in many ways. But still, for a fleeting moment every single day, I see the eyes of the mutilated beggar boy. I hear his broken voice say, "Excuse me, sir." If I had been brave enough to roll down the window and slip 50 rupees into his box, just $1, would everything be different today? Would I have had that other life, the one I dreamed in the car on that crazy dawn all those years ago? Maybe. Or maybe I actually did live that life, lived it fully, there in the timeless in-between. And now I am living this one. A dream, just another dream.
That was Mumbai Dollah, written and read by Brent Robison. Mumbai Dollah was originally published in Otherwise Engaged Literary and Arts Journal in the summer of 2021. When I first heard the title of this story, I assumed the word dollar was the US dollar, but it has an H on the end, not an R. What is a dollar?
Well, of course, it is the US dollar, but it's spelled to represent how it's pronounced by the beggar boy, which has the added benefit of making people wonder. Uncertainty is good.
But looking up the word on my phone right now, I see that dollar with an H means servant of God. Interesting, if it's true. Were you aware of that, or was it synchronicity, an unconscious mixing of the dollar with the dollar?
Wow, I had no idea about that. Synchronicity. Cool.
It would make sense, though, as the man in the story who helps the protagonist might in some ways be a holy man. You even refer to him as a sadhu.
Yes, he certainly plays the role of a leader, savior, guru in Bradley's life, helping him break free of the shackles of conventional thinking he was trapped in. But this guy is no self-proclaimed holy man. Those are the ones to beware of.
Right.
And I should say he's actually modeled after someone I know. A fictional version of a guy who lives right here in Woodstock, but spends several months a year in India, also named Shiv.
Ah, I know him. Now, you described the streets of Mumbai quite graphically. The beggar boy at the beginning really accentuates that cruel meeting of ancient and modern, and by modern I mean the West. It makes me think you've been there, and not just by Google. Is that so?
Well, this story is much like my others. It borrows heavily from my actual experience, but then becomes inextricably entangled with imaginary stuff. So yes, I was in Mumbai, went to the Colaba district and the Gate of India, had a mutilated beggar tapping on my taxi window.
Is it really a thing there to drug wealthy tourists with psychedelics to take off their cultural blinkers? Or did you make that up?
Well, let's say some guy with an anti-colonialist fervor works in Leopold's kitchen and randomly chooses this Western businessman as a target. Seems plausible to me, but I made it up.
Good. The straight-laced guy loses his grip on his past and takes up a new life in the present, which lasts quite a while, and he's happier for it, though he realizes he's making a choice, giving up what could have been. Any thoughts on this?
That raises an interesting question about choice, about free will. Did he actually choose, or is he following an unseen script, playing his assigned role in this time stream? The multiple universe theory says he lived both those lives and many others. In the story, he wonders, as I do, what seemingly insignificant actions are turning points that send our lives on completely unpredictable paths. The infinite branching of the multiverse.
In a way, this story reminds me of the India syndrome. Are you familiar with that?
No, what is it?
It's a psychological condition observed in long-term travelers to India, with a spectrum of severity ranging from alienation, anxiety and depression to more extreme cases of madness. Most often, but not always, seen in people engaging on spiritual quests. It's not a universally accepted diagnosis, but prevalent enough for travel insurance to be voided in cases of psychiatric disorder or drug use.
Wow, I didn't know about that. I was only in India for a week, but maybe that explains my dysfunctions ever since.
Could be.
But on second thought, I had those before I went there.
The East has had a huge impact on the West. Philosophy, religion, music, food. But I sometimes wonder if the hippie treks to India were an inadvertent act of colonialism. Some people might take offense at that idea. I'm not saying it was a conscious act, more that it was unavoidable. Can anyone completely escape their own culture?
Yes, that makes sense to me. But to give them the benefit of the doubt, individuals exploring other cultures for the sake of personal experience is really quite different from institutions like governments and corporations colonializing for power and wealth.
True, but there is something about being trapped in one's own culture. I mean, you might feel strongly about saving the environment and favor electric cars over gasoline, but the batteries are just as toxic. You can't escape. Not if you take transportation for granted.
Right.
If you want to save the world, you have to give up all means of transportation except walking and possibly the horse. In other words, you have to give up your life as you know it. Is that what Bradley Reed is doing in this story? What do you think?
He is making a dramatic change, but not motivated by saving the world. That's an impulse that needs careful scrutiny, if you ask me.
Yeah.
He recognizes that deep inside, he wanted freedom from that conventional life he was living. So maybe it could be said that by giving it up, he's saving himself. Maybe that's really what saving the world is all about.
Another thing that interests me, and I don't know how important it is to you, is that the man who saves Bradley Reed is someone from his own culture, albeit estranged, a stateless person, as Bradley becomes, emotionally at any rate. So, to be rescued by one's own kind. Is there any significance to that?
Well, in this case, I wanted to use my friend Sheev in the story, so the rescue by someone from Bradley's own culture is sort of accidental.
Okay.
But maybe if he'd been rescued by an actual Indian sadhu or someone much more foreign than Sheev, he wouldn't have seen his own potential transformation and would have fled back to his old life.
The familiar is a guide to the unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing. I'm wondering why you like to share your initials with some of the characters in your stories. Are you granting yourself a fictional existence, or is it something else?
I like that, granting myself a fictional existence. Actually, I'm working on a story collection in which that little gimmick is a thread throughout. But for me, it's more than a gimmick. It's a way of casting doubt on the fixed identities we all rely on. Asking, what is the self, anyway?
I think it's a circle.
And it's a metafictional hook that may keep the reader bobbing at the surface, sometimes submerged, sometimes not. Every story is a self-portrait of its author. Why pretend otherwise?
Yes, why pretend? This is The Strange Recital, on the web at thestrangerecital.com. The music on this episode was an excerpt from the song Why by Cara Tower from her album Ambience of Love. This is episode 22061.